No, I'm nervous.
That's fine.
Yeah,
It's just us, and it's
Yeah.
not like on live TV.
yeah. Don't worry about it. Okay, it's recording now. You can start.
Okay. Can you introduce yourself?
My name is Gerson Cortez.
Gerson, could you tell us a bit about yourself?
I recently turned 23 years old. I am going to Santa Ana College. I went to Santa Ana High School. I went to Willard School. I went to Sierra. I have been a Santanero since the first step I took in the United States. I kinda grew up here. I am here. Well, I guess it's different. It's a different experience growing up in a place and then making that place your home when you used to have a previous home, right? I've only pretty much lived in two places my whole life, and it's pretty much been half and half. I spent the first half of my life in this little town in Mexico called Pantla in Guerrero. And then the next half of my life I've spent within the city, and it's a really hard question to answer. I mean, how do I answer that question? Which part do I answer? My life in Mexico, my life here, growing up as an immigrant, growing up as a little kid. I don't know. What do you mean? Well, usually when I think about my experience growing up in Santa Ana, I usually think about my school years. Because when you're little, that's pretty much what your life is. It's just like go home and watch cartoons, and then you have to go to school. And usually those are the years that I remember the most, and that's usually how I remember my life is, what did I do in 5th grade, and what did I do in 6th grade, and what happened in 10th grade. So growing up in Santa Ana's Unified School District, it was a really complicated experience. These questions are so open-ended. I can talk about anything, any more direction. So my name is Gerson, and I've been living here for almost, yeah, almost 13 years now. Almost. My mom brought me when I was 10 years old. I had barely turned 20 years old, from Mexico. And I remember that when I first got here and I had my first look around this city, I thought it doesn't look that much different from the city next to my town. I never really saw like the difference between like this city and that one, and I always imagined every time they talked about El Otro Lado, and every time they talked about like going to the United States, it'd be like, oh, this land, this place where it'd just be awesome. And then I looked around and I was like, it just looks like Mexico, and there's not much of a difference, and I was kind of disappointed, and like it was like me just walking around Santa Ana, and like I know that it sounds really weird to say that like I was really disappointed to like see Santa Ana, but it's not because it was Santa Ana. It was just because it looked so much like my old city that I kind of just looked around and I said, "There's not much difference, and the buildings are the same, and the sidewalks are the same, and I'm going to like this store." The one thing that I do remember though is that the first time I went to the store, and my aunt took me there, and she bought $20 worth of food, and she put it on the counter, and I looked at her and I said, "All of that? You got all of that with $20?" And she looked at me like I was, yeah, it's just yogurt and soup. I was like, with $20, and I was just amazed, and I couldn't wait to tell my mom that my aunt had bought so much food with $20 and that she had been right all along, even though it just looked like Mexico. But yeah. So when I got here, I actually came here like I don't remember very well because little kid memory is so. I mean, when you're a little kid, you don't really care about time. You don't really care like It's been an hour. It's been a week. It's just been a long time. So I got here a long time before my mom got here, my little brother. I spent. I seriously think it mustn't have been more than a week, but it felt like so long. At my aunt's house, just waiting for my mom to get here from Mexico, right? And like you always hear like people getting scared because están pasando y están por el cerro y los atraparon, se quedaron, los regresaron. So even though I didn't really understood what that meant as a kid, I was still scared that something like that would happen because I knew it wasn't a good thing. Because when everybody talked about it, it was always like a bad thing, right? So I remember I'd be waiting for my mom to get here to hear my aunt tell me like, oh, she's on her way. And then when they finally got here, it was weird. Just like knowing that we were finally here. I feel like it wasn't until my mom and I met again with my little brother that like it finally hit me that we were like in a new place, right? And we weren't just in a new place, we were in a new place to like stay and live. And if seriously it was like a block away from here, from the library. It's on Hillsworth and Ross, so it's like not even a block away. And that was like the first place that I ever lived in Santa Ana, in the United States. And I remember that I don't know, like I was scared because I knew that we were supposed to go to school. I didn't know that it was illegal if you didn't like go to school for a while, right? But so we just kept letting it off where we're just kind of like, okay, who cares? He's supposed to start school in a bit, but he's still, I mean, we just got here like 2 weeks ago, and he's going to go into this place full of people who speak like a different language. And my mom thought that they had like a different alphabet, and she was trying to get people to teach me like the new letters and stuff like that. And they had to tell her like, no, we use the same one, don't worry about it. And so like, like my mom had no idea what she got herself into. And like as a kid, I was trusting my mother to like know these things because you're like, you're the adult, you're the mother, you know these things that you're doing, and then you realize you don't know these things, and then there's like this fear because you're like, okay, we're just doing this totally new thing, and not even my mom knows what's going to happen. And then I remember that I was like so scared to start school. And I remember that like I was out the first day that I went to school. I started 5th grade here in Sierra Intermediate School. And I remember that like the first day I was remembering that when I started 1st grade in Mexico, like my mom took me, right? And she went into the classroom and there were moms all around, and like all the kids were nervous and some were crying. But your mom was there and it was cool, and they left at some point, but at least they took you there. But this time we had to take a bus there, and we had to wait in front of Big Saver or behind Big Saver for the bus to like pick us up, and it was like really early and it was really cold. I remember like when I first got here, everything was cold. I don't remember like being that cold ever. So it was like really early, and my mom told me, well, I'm not gonna go with you, and you're gonna get in this bus, and try to make friends and ask them where the office is. That was the office, right? But in like this big letters on the door, I was supposed to look for a door that said office, because office. And I was like, okay, cool, I'll look for office. And then I got off the bus, and everybody just left, and I was just there, and I wanted to cry so bad. And like, I wanted to go back and ask the bus driver, like, where do I go? But I was so scared to ask her because I was like I don't speak English, and I knew that she spoke Spanish, but I felt like it'd be wrong if I spoke Spanish to her. So even though like I was so scared to like ask her, like, where do I go from now? Right? I kind of just stepped off, and I kind of saw where like everybody was going, and everybody was going to the lunch line for breakfast. So I followed them, but I didn't have an ID, and I didn't have anything, and there was like people with vests, and they were like adults, and I was like, what are you doing? Why are you here? Because we didn't have like custodians or like chaperones in my old school, right? It was kind of just like teachers and students, and that was it. So I saw like these adults, you're standing there watching you, and I was so scared. Until like finally like somebody asked me something, and I kind of just make this face like, and they're like, oh, like they said something, and then they kind of just took me to the office, and then a counselor or some person like said something again, and I made the same face where I was just like, and so like, okay, and he got somebody else and like, ¿Cómo te llamas? And I told them, and they finally got me to my class, and they were like, you're really lucky because your teacher speaks Spanish, right? And that's where they pull like they pulled like old kids who had barely come from Mexico, and they were learning Spanish. So the teacher was kind of like Mr. Gruberg. I barely find out that his name is David, and I've been wanting to write to him for so long, because I don't know, like he was my first teacher, and he was like the first person who like, you know, introduced me to like the English language, and I've been wanting to learn English for so long, and I don't know, like I still think about him, and I'm like, Gruberg, Mr. Gruberg, he was German, he had a Latino wife, he had like a son, he was 50 years old that year, and like I remember so many things about him, and I want to tell him like, you know, I'm here now and I know the language, and it was because of you, and I'm going to college and all these things. But anyway, I'm getting off track. So I don't know if I'm doing it right. Yeah, I'm going too much.
It's okay.
I'm going like day by day. What am I doing now? What do I want to tell Mr. Gruberg I'm doing now? I'm doing okay, which is a lot more than I thought I would be doing a few years ago. I'm going to college. I'm in Santana College, and it's awesome, and even though it's not perfect, they try to be really helpful. I'm trying to actually do things, and I'm trying to actually be out there, even though like it used to be so scary to go up to somebody or to a camera and like talk to somebody and tell them, well, did you know that this is going on, or did you know that you can do this instead, or anything like that. I'm trying to put myself in that situation, and I've been doing it, and I'm better at it, and I'm pretty good at it now. But I don't know how to answer the question.
What are you doing now, concerning any possible organizations you might be involved with and what they might be about?
So right now I'm part of the Orange County Dream Team, and I'm also part of the Colores Queer Orange County. They both deal with like separate issues, although we're trying to like merge them together. With the Orange County Dream Team, we organize around immigration, and for a few years it was mostly like focused on students and like young people and what we call the Dreamers. Because of our capacity, right? We're just like a grassroots organization. We don't really have like much funding. Any money that comes to us, like we have to fundraise ourselves, and nobody gets paid or anything like that. We just fundraise, and then we use it to like make things happen. So marches and protests and clinics, legal clinics, and you know, rent and like any stuff like that. It all goes back to that. But recently, we've been trying to push for a broader solution to immigration. I know that like a few years ago, it was mostly about the Dream Act and the standalone as a standalone bill. But now we really feel that the political atmosphere is ripe for us to push for something better, because the Dream Act was kind of like, I know we can't get anything else. We'll do this for right now, and we'll be back for like my mom and my dad and my neighbor, right? But now we know that this is a time to ask for something bigger, to demand something bigger for our families who have been here for years, and they deserve to live without fear of like not seeing their families again because of deportation. So we're organizing around the current immigration bill that's being proposed. I think it's the House right now. It's not perfect. It's pretty horrible. I'm having my doubts about it. But right now, I feel like the strongest fight we have is here in California. As a border state, I feel like a lot of people forget that we're a border state because we're so big, and it's so long that like it's seriously like halfway across the United States, and then we forget that like at the bottom we have like this border to Mexico, and there's like people coming in like daily, and there's people being kicked out daily as well. So right now, I feel like our focus is sort of bringing visibility to that and to what that means, because people forget that like California has the highest rate of deportation in all the country. And I know that sounds just like, oh well, people have been deported. Of course, they're supposed to be deported, but I mean, if you really like break down and like go deeper, then it means something more than that. It doesn't just mean somebody got deported, somebody got sent back to wherever they came from. It's somebody was taken from their family, and somebody was taken from their children, and somebody was taken from their work, and you know, it's like people are disappearing. People are disappearing. We talk about like disappearances in like other countries in like Latin America, where it's just like this bad thing. People are disappearing, and people are disappearing here. Like one day, there's a possibility that somebody will go to work and they'll say goodbye to their children, and then 7 o'clock will come and their children will be waiting for their mom or their dad, and they'll be wondering like what happened, and it won't be until like days later that they'll know that they're at some detention center, or that they're already back in Honduras or wherever they came from. And you know, what do they do now? What do they do? I mean, so many children like foster care system because like their parents are no longer here, and their parents are no longer here because our country keeps kicking them back out. And how is that fair? It's so that's what we're focusing on. It's stopping that, because it's a horrible thing for that to happen to anybody. And right now, throughout the country, there's this one thing called secure communities that they're like implementing, and it sounds so nice, secure communities. You know, for our communities to be secure and safe. The program was disguised under the purpose of deporting criminals, right? So somebody's accused and tried of murder, and they were like convicted of murder, and he doesn't have papers. Let's kick him out. And people are like, yes, let's do that. Awesome. But people don't realize, or tend to forget, or don't want to realize, is that under secure communities, and it's happened, people have called the cops on domestic violence, on a mugging, on a car being broken, and then the person that called the cops and said, like, this happened to me, I need help, I need the police to come help me right now. Then when they're being questioned, and like, you know, that issue comes up, you know, can I see an ID, can I see that? Well, I don't have one, I don't have papers, I'm documented. Then there's a good communities, quite a few people have been detained and deported because they dared call the police, you know, who are supposed to protect and serve, right? Then that's something we're trying to stop. And I know that like it's gonna be really hard to do this throughout the country, but in California we have the possibility of making that happen. And right now, like as I'm speaking right now, we have the chance in the Trust Act. And we're trying to push our governor to sign it. He's vetoed it before, and we're trying to make Governor Brown sign it, because it would just help so many families stay together. So that's been our focus in the past few weeks and this past year, making that happen so that no more people are like detained and deported and separated from their families just because they got victimized and they got hurt and they dared to call law enforcement. So I always thought that it was a really funny thing for them to call it secure communities, because I mean, as we're speaking, people are afraid to call the cops, and if our neighbors are afraid to call the cops if they see us in trouble, and if I'm afraid to call the cops if I see somebody in trouble, or if I'm in trouble because I'm afraid that I'll get deported, or that my mom will get deported, or that my neighbor will get deported, then how is this break between law enforcement and the community supposed to keep us secure? How are we supposed to be safe if, for all intents and purposes, there is no law enforcement that we can call? there is no one up there that we can trust and say, help us, we're alone right now. We're alone because if we try, then there's a possibility that at some point we'll just be taken away. So that is what your Orange County Dream Team is trying to work on, and I'm really happy to say that I'm part of this group. And even though I'm not like this amazing organizer, even though I'm not like the greatest speaker or like the greatest mind, I know that like by being part of this group, by being this person within this group, I'm helping in some way help somebody else. Even if I'm just going to the meetings, even if I'm just sitting there listening to somebody, I know that by doing that, then I'm getting knowledge that I can pass on to somebody else to let them know that they're not alone and that nobody's talking about this, that there's not no one talking about this, that there's people having these conversations and organizing around this issue, and that it's not just something that happens, it's something that people are trying to stop from happening as well. As the Orange County Dream Team, we try to fundraise every month because, again, we're not a nonprofit, we're grassroots. So we don't really get to like ask for grants or stuff like that. So we hold events, we ask for donations, we have merchandise, so that we can have enough each month to pay for rent for our space, because having a space is tremendously important for any group to have. I mean, it's just like the stability that it brings to like unify us. If I know that like in the very beginning of the group, I wasn't part of that. It's part of its history. There was like, jumping around from place to place, and it was just so like so inconsistent. But having a space gives us that rock on which to say, this is where we go as Orange County Dream Team to organize and to plan things, and to, if we ever need it, if you ever need a place to sleep, if you ever need a place to do homework as you as a person or as an organizer, then like there's this for you too. So we really need to raise enough funds each month to pay for rent. Right now we're being hosted at the El Centro Cultural de Mexico. I think we're the only program there that pays rent. I'm not really sure why they make us pay rent, but I guess, I don't know. We help out. We help them out too. So we need to pay rent for that. Otherwise, I guess we won't have our space to be part of. And also just for like, necessary expenses like paint and canvases and posters and markers and water and food that we might need for like any action that we might have. I know that when people that are at risk of being arrested or anything like that, we need to be there for them, and we need to like provide them with like at least the basic things like band-aids, just little things like that. And of course, like our biggest and like the thing that we pride ourselves of is that every year we give out scholarships for undocumented students, because we know that like it's very hard for a lot of people to get financial aid, especially since in a lot of states, like undocumented kids have to pay like so much more in out-of-state tuition fees. And we're very lucky to be part of like the few states who actually like give us in-state tuition. And we're even luckier to be part of like one of the very few states that allow us financial aid. So we are aware that we're very lucky in that way, but we still want to give somebody else an opportunity to get some sort of assistance in furthering their education. So we open our scholarship to anybody from like all over the world. Pretty much we've gotten applications from, oh god, I forget, some island somewhere. But like anywhere. I think this last time we only did it for like USA though, because we gotta mail and stuff, and we're poor. I mean, you know, it's still, we're still bounded by our capacity, and we're still limited by that. And I wish we had like enough money to like do all these amazing things that we have in mind, but you know, we're just like students, and we're just like people, and it's not like we get paid to do this, right? It's not like we're just this huge organization. I feel like some people like tend to forget that because we're always like very active, and we're always trying to do like everything at once, but it's all because of work of like these people that just got together and said there's something messed up, and I can't stand to just sit here and do nothing. So I'm always amazed that it's not like this great academics, and it's not these great politicians, and it's not these great like what you would think of when you think of community leaders, right? This like old man with his wisdom and you know years of experience. It's just these kids that got together and said, let's do something about this. So I'm really happy to know these people. Um, so yeah, we also, that's what we fundraised for. We fundraised for their scholarship, which is we try to like push it each year as much as we can. We went from like $1,000 to give away to like $3,000, and this year's goal is $5,000 to give away. And we always divide it, right? We always say like for high school students transferring to college, for community college students transferring to college, to like, you know, like, so yeah. I'm not part of that committee, so I'm not really sure how it works, but yeah. That's what we need to fundraise for. We need to fundraise so that we can keep going, and you know, it's fun. We get to have fun doing it. If everything worked out all right, and if everything worked out well, and if the world was just and fair, then I feel like there wouldn't really be any need for us to get together and to organize and to, you know, plan these things and to go to offices and organize sit-ins and walkouts and all these things. I know that like if everything turned out well, there wouldn't be a need for that. But I when I think of the future, I see myself continuing to do these things. Because I know that even if it all turns out well with immigration, even if immigration reform passes and it's not this messed up bill that militarizes borders and criminalizes people, if everything goes well, I know that there will still be somebody left being taken advantage of and being oppressed. And I know that even if I get what I want, and even if I get my fairy tale ending, somebody else will be like struggling and trying to survive in some way. And I feel that if anything, and if everything goes well for me and for us, then I will be giving a better platform on which to stand to then be an ally to another cause and to try to help somebody else. So even though I wish there was no reason for us to have to do all of this and like hold meetings until late at night and worry about messaging and all that stuff, I when I see the future, I still see myself doing this. If not for me, it's still for somebody else. I got into OCT. I became a member, I guess officially. No, there's no officially. I became a member of OCT in like March 2011. And I always try to like point this out because I feel that it's a very important thing to point out. I got into OCT after that soul-crushing defeat of the DREAM Act in 2010, at the end of 2010. Because like 2010, I wasn't there for 2010 and like the push for the DREAM Act. I've read the history and I've seen the videos of like this immense push that like people from all over the country did, were like hunger strikes and civil disobediences and like these like crazy stunts that people had to pull so that we could like be so close for it to just be like crushed down. So when I got into OCT, it was right after that defeat, and morale was so low, and it was just like there was like no hope, and our like most our most optimistic like visions to the future was we won't have a chance to push for anything else until like 2014. And that was what I got into. Like,
May I have your attention, please? The library will be closing in 25 minutes. Please bring your books to the desk to be checked out. If you wish to apply for a library card, you must do so now. Children and students, call now if you need to ask for a ride home. Su atención, por favor, la biblioteca va a cerrar en 25 minutos. Por favor, traiga al escritorio ahora los libros que desea llevar.
they'll
Si
cut it.
desea sacar una tarjeta de la biblioteca,
They know.
hágalo
They're doing
ahora.
this. They're learning.
Jóvenes y estudiantes, hagan ahora sus llamadas para que los pasen a recoger.
I'm giving them a job. Make sense of what I'm saying. Sorry.
That's fine.
Okay.
So that.
So I got to OCET in 2011, and it was just like 5 people were going to the meeting, and there was like nothing being planned, and nobody was showing up, and it was that sort of thing. But I kind of just got into it because I'd been looking for something like this for so long. Because for so long, like, nobody talked about this. To me, nobody mentioned anything about this. Nobody mentioned the DRUM Act. Nobody mentioned, like, immigration reform. Nobody mentioned A540. Nobody mentioned anything about this to me. And I was so lost, and I felt so alone. And I felt like I was just walking on this road, like, lost, and I had nothing. And until somebody finally did. And even then it was a slow start. I had to wait like a whole other year until I was aware that there was this group like blocks away from me, like seriously like 2 blocks away from me, like organizing around this issue that like was so close to me. And I finally found it, and when I found it, it was just like broken. It was just like, and I can totally understand because, you know, I had barely heard about the DREAM Act like for 2 months. I had no idea it existed. And they'd been organizing around there for like the whole past year, and they'd put so much effort into it, and then for that to just like go away, it must have been like horrible. So I was lucky enough though to come around in this part, even though it was like so broken. Because when you're broken, I mean, there's only one thing to do and say, like, how do I put myself back together? And that's pretty much, like, I walked into this one meeting, and they said, like, how do we put ourselves back together? How do we get on our feet again? And how do we start, like, giving people hope again, right? And that's actually around the time that the whole conversation around, we called it administrative relief at the time, and that's what we wanted. But that's kind of what gave birth to deferred action. And that's kind of like what we have, like, deferred action at this moment. You have to Google that. It's deferred action. I can't get into it right now, right? But it was because of a conversation that OCET had, and a conversation that OCET and Dream Team LA got together to have, and they said, there's something we can do. There's something that we can demand from our president and tell them, you have the power to give us these rights, and you have the power to take away the fear of deportation and grant us some sort of relief. You can grant us like work permits and social security numbers so that we can use our education. We can finally use our degree to like work in the field that we've been dreaming of for this long, right? And that's a year that we started sort of like organizing around deferred action. And I can't believe that I was part of that. I don't know. It's just so weird to think about. I mean, a few years before, it was just nothingness, and then out of nowhere, I was watching this whole movement build up something that would seriously change a lot of people's lives. And, you know, it came just because, again, just a bunch of people, a bunch of like 20-year-olds and late teenagers, to call them, got together and said, this is what's needed and this is what we can do to make it happen. And I am so happy that we had the people who had like the knowledge to make it happen.
What was your role in OCDT then and now?
Ooh, okay. So in OCDT, it's kind of weird because like when you join OCDT, you're just a member. Like you go to the first meeting and you can like voice anything you want, and you know if you disagree with like anything, you can just tell them like that's messed up. We shouldn't do that type of thing, or like maybe we should do this, and you're just a member, right? And I mean I didn't really like. I wasn't one to stand up and speak up and do anything like that. I was just happy to listen to somebody have the conversations that I wish I had heard years before. And so I was just there. I was just a member. And I was just happy to meet like amazing people like that. And then the next year, in 2012, I finally got the courage to say, okay, so I know how this group works and I know these people and I know that there's a lot more work to be done and I want to help out in some way with that. And then I said, well, what can I help out with? I mean, I don't know many things. I didn't go to law school like some people did. I didn't like, you know, I'm not like some awesome programmer. I seriously had to think and say like, what can I bring to this group that's kind of needed? And then I said, well, I'm on Facebook a lot. And like I'm on the internet all the time. And that's what I know how to do. Like I'm tweeting all the time. And I know how to get followers and I know all these things. And on our beginning of the year retreat that we have 2 retreats every year. On the first one that we had in January 2012, I raised my hand and I said I would like to volunteer to be the social media lead. And I mean, I know that it sounds so frivolous. I know that it sounds so like you're just gonna be on Facebook and you're just gonna make like these little things. But for me, it was like this huge thing that was so needed to do. Because again, I mean, I came from like not hearing anything about this. I came from like not knowing that this group was working so hard to do something. And I thought, well, why didn't I hear about this? Why didn't I know that even though this group was like here, 2 blocks away from my home, why didn't I know that they existed? Why did I know that they were working so hard on these things? And I thought, because I didn't see them on Facebook. It sounds so weird. I know it sounds so weird, but that was it. Like, who watches the news? Like, you're 15. Who the hell cares? Like, right? But you're online all the time. And I thought there could be this other 15-year-old kid out there, and she's having those same thoughts that I had, and she's thinking there's no way I can go to college, there's no way I can work here, there's no way I can like be those things that my teachers told me I could be since I was like in first grade. Because since you get here and like the first thing they tell you, like you have to go to college and get educated and you'll get this awesome job and you'll live happily ever after, right? And then you get to high school and you're all like, oh wait, I can't. Like not me, because even if I go to college, then I can't work, and I have friends who like have a BA in English or like have their masters and they're working as gardeners and like as waitresses, and that's those are like awesome, honest jobs. And you know, our parents worked those jobs and they've let us live and they've helped us survive. But there's also this one horrible nagging thing in your head that says, you've been told all your life now, you've been told for so long that you can become this. And then you get to this point and you realize you can't, right? So I felt that not knowing that there was work around this issue so that you could become somebody. You could become that person that you were told you could become, right? it was just so important to know that, to know that if I work hard enough and if I go to college, then there is a possibility that I can do this because there's people working really hard for this to happen. So I made that sort of my job, and you know, it's still not perfect because you know you're still a student and you still have family and you still have like a boyfriend to go to, and you know you still need to do things. You can't be on Facebook all the time telling like, but you're at least there and you're building up like a base of people to spread that word, and hopefully someday this one kid will click on a link and say, oh my god, like in Santa Ana, like 2 blocks away, there's this group doing these things. How can I reach out to them? Or even if not even that, even if they don't even want to like help out at all, it's just there's somebody working so that I can do something for myself too, right? Even though it might sound selfish or something like that, it's still something huge for somebody to have that realization. And I wish I had had that in high school. And I knew that if we kept working the way that we worked with just, you know, we did this and not telling anybody about it. You know, it sounds arrogant and it sounds narcissistic, but it's not just about building our own ego, like as a group, right?
May I have your attention, please? The library will be closing in 14 minutes. Please bring your books to the desk to be checked out. Children and students call now for a ride home if you have not already done so. Su atención, por favor, la biblioteca va a sacar en 14 minutos. Por favor, traiga el escritorio ahora los libros que desea llevar. Jóvenes y estudiantes que necesitan que los pasen a buscar, hagan inmediatamente sus llamadas. Gracias.
I talk so much.
Nothing.
I talk too much.
No, it's okay.
3 interviews. Okay, so so I where was I?
You were talking about ego.
Yes, thank you. So I know that like some people in the group felt uncomfortable for me to bring up the idea that we needed to be like visible as a group, not just as like the things that we did, right? Not just like the issues that we have to make visible, right? It's we have to be visible as a group so that somebody knows that they're not alone. And that was like that's I realized that was like what I could bring to this group. It was I'll have to let somebody know that they're not alone. Sorry. And that's what I do. I'm the social media lead, so that means that I kind of just like it's not just posting messages and it's not just like updating statuses. It's having like this strategy on how to like reach the most amount of people with as few words as possible, because people don't like to read much. So how do I get 1,000 people to read this message in 140 characters? Okay, that's how. Let's make it sound pretty. Let's make it sound shareable, and let's put a picture on it so that people can like send it to somebody else. You know, that's my thing.
Thank you, Gerson. It was awesome having you here.
You have to have me back again because we're not done. Cheryl told me that there's gonna be like a second part because I was gotta talk about like queer issues.
No, yeah, you went on about OCDT. I love OCDT. Don't get me wrong. Like, you could stop me.